my name is Eric Gomez, and I am one of the founders and rod makers with Leviathan Outdoors. Leviathan is an Austin, Texas-based fishing rod company. And this is the fourth video in a four-part series which talks about how you as a consumer can tell a great rod from a good rod. And in this fourth video, we're talking about the fishing rod guides. And fishing rod guides are extremely important to a fishing rod. There are a couple of factors to keep in mind. We're talking about the guide frame material, we're talking about the guide ring material, and we are talking about the guide placement itself. So I have an example of a typical fishing rod guide here. In terms of guide frame material, this guide in particular is a titanium guide. And what you're going to see most often on fishing rods is stainless steel, and stainless steel is really good. It's because it's affordable, it's strong and durable, but it's also a little heavy compared to titanium, for example. Titanium is another material that's out there in the market. It's much lighter than stainless steel, and it's corrosion proof, but it's also more expensive. In terms of guide ring materials, guide rings are made from ceramic materials like aluminum oxide, alkanite, silicon carbide, or zirconium. And it seems the case that with guide manufacturers, they tend to have proprietary materials for their ceramic rings, so that they can push a particular ceramic ring that you might not be able to find in another manufacturer. For example, Fuji really pushes their alkanite ring materials, which are a little bit harder than the aluminum oxide materials, and they're also affordable. So what a guide ring material does is, or what's special about it in particular, is the hardness. You want to pay attention to the hardness. So for most guides out there on the market shelves that you're going to find, they're made with aluminum oxide materials. And aluminum oxide is pretty much the entry point for a guide material. It's hard and it's okay for most fishing applications. If you want to fish braided line, I would suggest moving up to a more hard material like alkanite. If you're fishing saltwater with braided line or something along heavier lines, I would suggest moving up to something like silicon carbide, something that's extremely hard and tough. Keep in mind that just because you see a decal hanging from a rod from a reputable manufacturer like Fuji, that doesn't automatically mean that you're getting an extremely high quality guide. Fuji makes a ton of different guides with a ton of different ring materials and different frame options, and a lot of rod companies will buy the entry point, the starting point Fuji guides in order to get that decal hanging from their rods at Fuji Decal, and in order to sell rods. But I can tell you as a rod manufacturer that I can get a set of Fuji aluminum oxide guides for pretty cheap, in the range of $5, $6 or so for an entire set. For just a little bit more, you could upgrade to the alkanites. Alps also makes really affordable guides with titanium frames and zirconium rings. So, hopefully don't just focus on the brand as your sole criterion for selecting a guide. Look at the guide ring material and the frame material for whatever fishing application you're hoping to find. Another factor to look at is the guide placement. So here at Leviathan, we think that there's a threshold, a target that we're aiming for on where to put our fishing guides. We don't want too few guides so that the line touches the blank in any particular spot, but we don't want too many guides because guides create this hard spot on the blank that when you're cementing all these hard spots along the length of the blank, you have a danger or a tendency to change the action of the blank and to cause unnecessary weight on your blank. So we want to strike that balance between having too many guides and too few. And what we find is somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 guides on a 7-foot rod is pretty good. If you can find rods with closer to 9 or 10 guides on the 7-foot rod, you're doing really well. Any more than that, and we find that to be excessive. At Leviathan, what we do is we put our rods under load, under static load, where we want them bent at a 90-degree angle, and we use that static loading as a determining factor of where we're going to put our guides. We want the line running through the guides parallel along the length of the blank all the way through the tip. What that's going to ensure is that when the rod's flexing when it's being cast, or when you're retrieving a fish under load, that the line is going to be touching the blank. When the line touches the blank, you have an inefficiency. You have friction there, and that's inefficient. It could be better. So when you see a rod out there, a 7-foot rod with 6 or 7 guides on there, I could almost guarantee you that that line is going to be hitting that blank in at least one spot, if not several. And you're not going to be getting the greatest performance you can out of that rod, out of your line, out of your reels that you deserve for the investment that you made. So look for rods with at least one more guide than the length of the rod. So if you have a 7-foot rod, look for at least 8 guides, but preferably closer to 10 for optimal performance. So that is our tip for rod guides. And that concludes our 4-part series. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more videos from Leviathan Outdoors.